Welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We're here to raise your confidence and inspire your creativity. Each episode, we will have a different guest who will be discussing our Raise word. The Raise word is a word that will encourage you or empower you and at times inspire you to explore the word a little more for yourself. Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We've had lots of different and deep words recently, but today we're going to discuss a word that's very important and prevalent when we talk about mental health, and that is the word fine. And we're going to talk about it with a mental health expert, James Abbott. Hi James, how are you doing?
I'm really good, Carol, thank you. And you?
Yes, I am good, thank you. And well done for not saying, I'm fine, because that would have been the end of the podcast. So, James, we're going to talk about the word fine and all that it means. And I'm very pleased to have you on to talk to us today because we're doing this for World Mental Health Day. And actually, on the day we record it, it is Youth Mental Health Day as well. So I think the whole idea of mental health is becoming more and more uppermost in people's minds, which is great. But before we get into all of that, what does the word fine mean to you?
So the funny thing in which I mentioned yesterday, Carol, the word fine for me will always remind me of the Friends episode, which with Ross.
Yeah.
And if you've watched Friends, and if you remember, he walks in on Joey and Rachel, and they're kissing. They're starting to get together. And he stood there for quite a while processing what's happening, and they're trying to say, oh, I'm really sorry you found out this way. And then at one point he just goes, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. It's totally fine. I'm not fine. And then he raves on to say, oh, we should do like a double date, and I'll cook some food and you guys can all come over because I'm fine. And he's really, really dramatic about it.
Yeah.
And you can absolutely see he's not fine at all. He's not happy. And although it's a very obviously over dramatized made for TV kind of reaction, I feel it really kind of portrays the message we put across a lot of the time when we say we're fine.
Yeah.
And we're totally not.
Yeah.
And when we then reiterate it, like, no, seriously, I'm fine, it's that same kind of Rossism of like, I'm not, but I don't really want to talk about it, or not always that I don't want to talk about it, but sometimes it can be, I don't really know what's going on for me right now, and I don't know if I want to open up about it either.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes just be from a kind of like, I'm a little bit scared of what this is because I haven't maybe felt this way before, or this hasn't happened to me before, or I don't seem to be the same person that I was. I'm losing touch of that. And for me to actually say any of that to you, the person who's asked, are you okay, makes me feel like I might lose a little bit more of myself too.
Yeah, there's actually, there's so much to unpack in that, isn't there? So what I hear you saying is that it's a form of denial in some respects, but also it's a barrier, isn't it? It's a bit of a safety thing. If I say I'm fine, it's almost a way of people backing off. If I say I'm fine, then people on the whole will say, oh, that's great, and move on, even if they don't think you are fine. It's kind of like the words that say, just don't go there, because saying anything other than I'm fine there's a whole lot of nuance to how you respond then, isn't there?
Mm.
And who it is that you're responding to. So how do you respond to people when they ask how you are, and how do you think your reactions are affected by different people? It's quite a deep one, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
one
it
to
is.
think
And just
about.
yeah, I'm just playing with that. Like me personally, like how would I respond when asked? Or
Yeah.
so it's interesting you ask that, because for me at the moment, if somebody asks me how I am, um, I'm actually playing with this a little bit,
Mm.
in the sense of kind of talking about myself more as to what I'm up to in the world,
Yeah.
for example. Whereas before, it would have been like how I even, oh, I'm great, and genuinely great as well, not like a,
Yeah.
oh, I'm fine,
Yeah.
and very much put that across. And at the moment, I'm kind of playing with, I'm great. This is what I've done today. Like if I've just had a great conversation working with somebody, it's like, do you know what? It's going well today. I've just had 20 minutes with somebody that was very caught up in themselves. This actually just happened. And trying to support the daughter at the same time. And was I just checked in with them for 20 minutes and just sat and just gave them the space to kind
Mm.
of share where they're at and what was going on, and support them with it a little bit as well.
Mm.
So actually, yes, it's been really great. I'm doing great at the moment. Versus that kind of like, oh yeah, I'm good, thanks, I'm great. And how are you?
Mm.
And so playing with that literally this week around, what more can I bring to somebody's world than just, I'm great, how are you?
Mm.
And can that open up a conversation? Not always around the work that I do either, but just taking a bit of a think about, what have I done today?
Yeah.
Like I think I said with you when we opened the conversation, like I walked the dogs this morning. I'm glad I did it. It was
Mm.
overcast, perfect weather for walking dogs. And then we engaged about the sausages, of course,
The sausage dogs.
and sausage dogs.
Yes.
Um, when asked how I'm doing in general as well, to kind of bring it back to that I'm fine kind of thing, I notice a lot more that I'm a lot more honest with where I'm at.
Mm.
And if things are not going well, I will share that. As I think about it, it might even be sometimes, do you know what? I'm doing great. However, I'm just going through this at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just having this experience, or this has just happened. Um, because I've learned, I think one thing I've learned around from working with other people, being in the field of mental health and coaching, is that I can't hide my emotions anymore either,
Mm.
because I feel whatever I feel. I let emotions run through me when they run through me. Like if I'm having a bit of an off day, I'm feeling it.
Mm.
And so if people ask me how I am, I'm a lot more honest with, like, actually, I'm just having a bit of a, I don't feel myself kind of day. I'm just having a bit of a meh day. So
Yeah.
I'm just taking it easy
Yeah.
with where
Do
I'm
you
at.
think that helps the people that you're working with to feel more able to open up themselves?
I feel it does.
Yeah.
Yes. To be really open, especially in those, saying that it's initial conversation of working with somebody as well, of being very honest with where my day is today. Um, to offer that as like, no matter who you are, we all still go through different moods and states of mind. So we all still feel what we feel.
Mm.
What I do find interesting around that, Carol, as well, is that a lot of the time, what looked like drama at the time, when I share it, there's a humor to it, as if like I've lightened it a bit.
Mm. Yeah. So by sharing it, you've seen a different side of it, maybe, or been able to reframe it in some way.
Definitely, I think just by sharing it and just bringing that honesty with where I'm at, it opens up a connection with the other person.
Yeah.
And also, if it's with a friend, a family member, a colleague, that honesty can be really helpful for them to support me as well.
Yeah.
I've seen a real power, although I trip up on it sometimes and I'm not always fully honest. I've seen a real power in bringing that honesty of how I feel and where I'm at, and how helpful that is. Versus, as we said at the start, I'm fine, and then I'm holding it in. I mean, just saying the word for me, it's like it feels like I'm holding something in, like some pressure with it.
Okay.
Um, and then what tends to happen around that is we then, for me, I'll start skirting around the subject. It's like, oh, I'm fine. I really want to talk about it. I don't know how you're gonna. That the whole story plays out of, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't know how you're going to react to it. I don't know what's going to come of this. I'm sure I'll figure it out. But I think when we show up and we're honest around how we're feeling, we straight away release some pressure. And the person that we're speaking to, I want to say, drops any judgment on what's going on for us and is just open to listen and support. See that a lot.
Okay. And that's great, isn't it, for people to hear that maybe have said, I'm fine, because they don't know how much to kind of let their guard down.
Yeah.
That must be maybe helpful for people to hear that it can bring that kind of connection and vulnerability from the other person. I mean, I guess it depends in context as well, doesn't it? Because if you are walking your sausage dogs on your overcast day, and you see somebody and they're cycling in the opposite direction, kind of medium speed, but you know them, and they say, hi James, how are you doing? And you say, well, my goodness, I mean, I'm really in a massive psychological head spin at the moment. And they have to get off their bike and then sit down, and you're like, yeah, that's not what you want, is it? You just go, I'm fine, and they go. So in some contexts, I'm fine it's almost kind of tantamount to, hey, I'm acknowledging you, that kind of thing. But very much in the work that you do, it's much more about sitting down and working with the person and really finding out who they are. So tell us all about what you do and how you might see kind of fine show up in different ways.
Yeah, sure, Carol. I want to just go back to what you said as well, though, there as well. I think it's a really good point, because if there's one thing I've seen around that, those kind of passing comments of somebody just walking past you or cycling past you and just saying, like, oh, hi, you okay, as they're flying past, and you might just go, oh, I'm fine, as they go. I've seen moments with that where I've not been feeling great, but then just somebody acknowledging me as they've gone past, from a different space, like full of energy, like a smile, something like that. I've noticed that, like, in that moment, oh, I feel okay now.
Okay.
Like, let's stick with dog walking, because that seems to be a theme for this. But like, walking the dogs, feeling a bit low, feeling a bit crap, and then like somebody will just walk past that maybe I recognize,
Mm,
full of a smile, like, oh hi, and I'm like, oh hi, um, and then like, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm all right, and they walk on, and then I
mm.
reflect on that conversation now, and I'm like, oh, I just came back, I just bounced back,
So
like I
kind of
was,
took a bit of their energy, and then you're actually kind of professing of,
yeah,
yeah, I'm fine. I'm all
yeah,
right. Interesting.
isn't it
Mm,
just those passing conversations, and I'm a real kind of believer around things just seem to show up that are super helpful when we're in those frames of mind, right down to somebody just passing by that just is in a different space to where you're at.
mm,
And it just brings you out in that moment. And before before coming across coaching and mental health, that just looked like I was putting on a bit of a front. But what I then started to realize was that that moment where I was all kind of like smiles and positive, I'd literally just kind of bounced back.
okay.
Like, oh, I'm still here,
Yeah, yeah. A
regardless
kind
of
of
how I was
gratitude
feeling.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And whereas before I'd then carry on walking and just be back in like that low feeling again. Now I'm like, I felt fine just then. Hang on a second.
I
What's
can
going
feel
on
fine.
here? There's
Yeah.
no way that I can be permanently feeling like this when they've just walked past. I've reacted and I've suddenly felt a lot clearer in a totally different state of mind. So then I'm almost just kind of calling like, well, this makes no sense. So actually, maybe I have bounced back a little bit because that's what we do. Like we design to move up and down a ladder of different states of mind, and that happens all the time.
Mm,
A lot of which we have no control over. And so when we notice that we've come back up, we then, for me, like I then started to see that state of mind was temporary. Because look, I'm clearer now. I'm a bit more content. And that doesn't mean I'm then going to remain in complete contentment for the rest of the day,
mm,
skipping along with the sausage dogs. But I can see that things show up, that states of mind reset and change, and we're in this constant state of just moving between them all the
mm,
time
mm.
as well, which has been a huge game changer for me.
Yeah. So fine as a vehicle to moving back to more of a state of being positive.
Yeah, and that's the thing we find, isn't it? Like it's a great example of like those fleeting moments versus like those more kind of maybe more in-depth moments where you are with that person and you do get that I'm fine,
Mm,
but because you're much more present and there with them, you're picking up a lot more on what's going on behind the word of I'm fine
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So you so coming back to your question that you asked me, like what is it I can't remember what you said now.
Yeah. What do you do? What do you do? How
Oh yeah.
what do you do in the field of mental health, really?
So in the field of mental health, I work with young people and adults. I work with them either one to one or in my Project U community
Hmm.
that I have, paid community, where um, I work with them to help them feel more like themselves again.
Mm,
I work with them to really kind of simplify what mental health is, to show them that we all have mental health no matter what.
mm,
Nobody is truly broken. Nobody's ever broken. Um there's a feeling which I've had myself of like I've lost sight of myself. I'm broken. I'm not who I used to be, and I've seen that that's not true.
okay.
I've seen that underneath whatever we're feeling, we are innately okay. We are mentally healthy no matter what.
Mm,
Even when we don't always feel it, there's still a part of us that is still absolutely fine.
okay.
And when I work with people, I'm not so much looking at what their, let's say, what their label might be or their diagnosis or the thing that they're struggling with. I'm looking at what's been helping them all along.
Okay.
From the moment they were born to the moment to where they are now. For however long they've been suffering with something, the thing that comes up is you're still here, so something must still be keeping your show running. Let's look there.
Yeah.
Because that sounds much more helpful than you being given something else where you have to try and manage this perceived label that you're struggling with.
Yeah. Interesting. So how does kind of fine fit into that? So if someone is saying, I'm really not fine, James, I'm really not, and I really can't see the way ahead, I really cannot see anything positive, what steps do you take to help them to kind of start seeing that positive way again?
So a lot of the times with the conversations I have, it will be very much kind of in the moment, real time.
Yeah.
So going with what comes up that makes sense to have that conversation about with them.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's like I'm really, really not doing fine at all and I can't see any way ahead with this, then it might just be right. Okay, so tell me about what's going on. Tell me about what you're feeling right now. What's running through your head? What's happening?
Yeah.
Let's take the time to actually listen to that, because that alone sometimes, just being able just to share where they're at,
Yeah.
can be very helpful for them just to let go a little bit and release.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to that I'm fine to everybody else. We're holding on to it again, we're bottling it up, we're carrying it with us, and we're not able to release it. So yeah, if I'm talking to them about mental health, that they've got an internal system that's resetting them all the time, and they're like, that's not how it looks to me at all, James. Like, I don't feel fine right now, no matter what you tell me.
Yeah.
That tells me one thing, first of all, that I'm completely disconnected from them. Like, I've gone off into my, let's say, teaching head to say, well, let me tell you about mental health and how it works. Okay. I'm not paying attention to them. And it also just, it shows me, okay, so like we need to kind of slow down and reconnect, because I'm missing what point you're putting across. So things like that of like, right, okay, forget what I said. That was waffle. You've just even just saying you've just spotted me. I've just disappeared and done exactly the same thing. I've just gone into my head to throw things at you. Let's come back and let's start again. Tell me about what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important for the person that's being coached to hear, because I guess one of the fears when you go to a coach or a counselor is that, I mean, people know their good coach or a good counselor won't give advice, won't tell you what to do. But the fear is that even in that point of need, you're wanting to kind of please them or say the right thing, come across as the very best counselee. Is that a word? I don't know.
No.
It's
Yeah.
that you can be, and have that kind of wall of no, I'm fine, I've got it all together. So to have a coach say, actually, no, hang on a minute, I can see that there's more that you're saying, and I want to kind of take a few steps back and listen again, I think is really important. Really important. And again, it's the difference between really saying to somebody, no, I want to know how you are, versus it's just a platitude, it's just something you say, we're British, let's just check how each other are, but actually, please do not tell me what's really going on, because I haven't got the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Um, so it's World Mental Health Day. That's what we're kind of talking about. And you said about, I'm really interested in this, basically, and this kind of baseline of really we're all we're all fine underneath it. Or I'm really interested in that, particularly dealing with, as you know, with long COVID that I've got and all these aches and pains and things that I have every day. The feeling of a baseline of being fine is an interesting one. Tell me a bit more about why that's such a principle for you. It's so important.
Yeah, the reason for me that it's a principle for me is that from my own story of struggling with anxiety,
Mm,
and going down the route of having to manage it and losing sight of myself and feeling like I had become somebody that was no longer had a sense of humor, was no longer kind of lighthearted and easygoing, but like everything was just a huge fear and I couldn't cope and I made mistakes and everything was a mess. For all the time I was trying to manage that, it just kept me in it. And then starting to discover that underneath all of that was a perfectly healthy system that was clearing this anxiety all the time. That's when it became a principle for me. So it wasn't just kind of like a thing I had to learn and affirmation it or anything like that.
mm,
This was a thing where I actually saw it at work. Like an example of that, one thing one thing I started to explore was that the mind and the body are perfectly capable of resetting themselves,
okay.
um, and healing themselves as well. And actually, the less we get involved with that, the easier it is for it to do the work. That without a time scale too.
Mm,
Like the time scale's our idea of like, oh, this I should be feeling better soon.
mm,
But if we can just let go of that and just know that underneath that we are perfectly healthy and there's a system that's doing the work to help us or recover us or at least give us as much functionality as we possibly can with what it's got, doing the best with what it's got, then that's when it became a bit of a game changer for me. In the sense of I got really curious about, well, if the body resets itself and the mind resets itself, then that means this anxious experience I'm having right now cannot stay here
mm,
because my mental health system, my physical system too, is doing the work now to clear it. The reason I'm feeling uncomfortable is because I've got caught up in a load of thinking about a circumstance and I'm sat in it right now.
mm,
And the more I try and manage it, for me, the more I try to manage it, the more I try to affirmation it or anything like that, the more I was in it because it just stayed there. And I just remember playing with this one evening when I come back home from a few days away and the anxiety came back. And on this particular moment, um, we'd decided just to get a board game out and play a board game, like just
yeah.
a normal life thing.
Mm,
And I'm like, do you know what? Despite feeling like anxious as hell at the moment, I'm going to do it because if it's true that my system is already working on clearing, then if I just do this, let's see if that's true.
mm,
And it was almost like the idea of playing the game felt like a real kind of intuitive moment from within of like, can you play the game, please, James, so we can just clear your system?
mm,
So I did. And I remember, let's, I remember feeling all the feels,
mm,
but focusing on the game. And then at some point, maybe 15, 20 minutes in, it went with no work required from me. And I just remember sitting there like going, wow, it's true.
mm,
No matter how caught up in stuff I get, there is still a part of me that is okay, an intelligent part of me that he's now clearing the system. He's doing the job.
Mm.
And that's how it became a principle for me, because I'd felt it. I'd had a real felt experience, and I could see that, well, if it's doing it for this, then what else is it doing it for? What other areas of my world is it doing it for as well? And I just started to get really, really curious to see more. Like I'd start to see that if I was in a low mood, it just meant that energy levels were low, but my system was doing work to recharge. In the same way as, like, if I'd overdone it the day before, the reason I was maybe just feeling a bit crap the next day is because I'd used too much. I'd used all the energy up, and the body's like, okay, so we need to slow things down. We just need you to take it easy. Can you just follow these little real life steps from, I don't know, sit down, watch Netflix, or do this, do that, while we recharge you? And of course, by following those, it then meant bounce back. I'm like, oh, I'm all right now. I bounced back. So, yeah.
If you know everything is anything but fine right now, then do go to www.raiseforall.com, where there's lots of different resources that you can download and things that you can do, communities that you can join around Raise to help you feel that little bit better. Thank you to James for this episode, and now we return to the conversation. Yeah, so you're talking about very kind of simple, basic things like board games. I know some people do jigsaw puzzles or doodling, that kind of thing. And although the act of it seems basic, it's there's quite a lot behind it, isn't there, to really try and kind of intentionally allow, as you said, the kind of system to reset a bit. I mean, I remember not the riots that happened recently, but years ago there was all kinds of riots, and particularly where my mum lived. And I remember that it was all over Facebook. They were going to come down a road and do all these things, and it was really terrifying.
Yeah.
And I remember doing latte art with my husband. My husband's was a barista at the time, and just creating this latte art. And as you said, you feel all the feels. I felt absolutely terrified, but I was really conscious that I wanted to kind of create something beautiful. And actually, as you were talking way earlier on, I had a phrase that I believe kind of God gave to me years ago, which was easily wrecked, easily rectified. And I think that's a really interesting kind of dichotomy, that yes, things can be bad, but there's always the polar opposite. Things can always be good as well. And it's finding the right people to show you that. I think one of the key things for me in the place that I'm in at the moment is that bit you were talking about really listening to the person and what they're saying, and hearing that if they're saying they're not fine, being with them in that moment first of all. And I'm really pleased that you talked about being with them in that moment first, and then helping them, because I think I know there's a massive danger for me of just wanting to fix things out of love, out of wanting to empower the person, not out of a stand aside, I can manage this kind of thing. Just wanting to see them happy. But it's so important to kind of meet people where they're at, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a big thing I learned from coaching was that I'm not the expert of this person that's in front of me. I never will be. They are the expert of themselves. They know what they need. It's just that maybe nobody's ever shown them that before. Maybe nobody's kind of pointing them back to to things that they're doing that are really helpful as well. You know, there are moments where I just start to point them to that. Just literally, like you say, just holding that space for somebody can be so helpful. And to point them to the moments where they are just starting to reset. Like I remember a client got in touch, and they were so caught up in it in their own anxiety, and really struggling. And I remember them coming onto the call, and they just exploded in front of me with like the story of what was going on for them, what they were struggling with. And I remember sitting there, and I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this person at all. Like, they seem so caught up in it. This looks so real and genuine, and like, where do I even go with this conversation? And I caught myself, Carol. I was like, oh, I'm not the expert in this person. I don't have the answers for them because I'm not the one that's got the answers. And what I also noticed was I was feeling anxious myself, and I just had this intuitive moment of like, I'm feeling what they're feeling. This is where we're going with this. I don't need to have answers. I'm feeling it.
Wow.
And I just, again, allowed that space for them to talk for however long they talked for. And when they stopped, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can feel it coming off you. And I said, I want to just hold this space with you now. There's nothing to say here, but let's just sit with this. Let's just slow this down and let things settle. And we did. And we sat there for several minutes, just like you and I on Zoom, just making eye contact and just holding the space for each other. And there was just a minute where they took a breath and their eyes drooped a bit. And I was like, it feels like you're settling down now. And they were like, yeah. And I said, I tell you what, it also looks like you're incredibly tired. And I'm not surprised after what you've been running through your head for the last 24 hours. And at some point during that conversation, I said, can you see how you just reset yourself? Can you see how that's just worked? Just from holding the space. There was nothing that I could give them in that moment to help them. There was no technique that I could say to them of like, go and do this, go and do that. It just purely required a realization of they're the expert. I know nothing. Like Fawlty Towers, I know nothing.
You need to be a bit more Spanish than that, James.
Terrible,
come on, if you're going to do it.
Manuel the Yorkshire waiter. And that's what it's about. It's just following our own intuition with that person, as well as noticing where they're at and seeing what would be helpful to do. And I feel like the more all of us as humans can do that, can just hold the space for somebody, that's one of the most helpful things anybody can do for anybody, really. We do, as we mentioned like before, we do get really caught up in everything's going so fast. You're okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Oh, good. Yeah, see you later, kind of thing. If somebody actually says I'm not doing great, but our speeded up mind sometimes as well can go, oh, it sounds like it might be mental health. I don't know how to deal with that. Okay, I'll just move on. Because there's such this stigma around it, but there's so much information around it now. And yet we miss the point of like, when we notice that like somebody said to us they're fine, we're like, I don't think they are. And we check in and we just hold the space for them to talk. That alone can be really powerful and helpful. Like, if you've ever experienced that yourself,
you feel seen, don't you?
You really do.
Especially if it's someone that knows you. I mean, sometimes It will probably be quite annoying if someone says, "How are you?" and I say, "Yeah, I'm fine," and they say, "You're not really." I'm like, "No, really, I am." Please, I'm fine. I'm telling you, I'm fine. But yeah, two things. One, a few things actually. One, I've noticed actually throughout the whole interview that the energy has been really lovely and calm, really, really listening, um and that's been so important. The second thing I'm kind of really interested in, and is a bit of a revelation to me, I think, is that I think we talked at the top of the podcast about fine being like a baseline and almost like a, you know, a mediocre. Fine is all right, but actually, I wonder how many people just need to get back to fine, so they don't have to be on top of it, shouting from the rooftops and, doing things at a crazy rate of knots. Sometimes getting back to fine is good enough.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I mean, I don't know, what do you think? Or is that just a way of, don't know, what do you think?
I think, I think the more we can just make time to be fine, make time to feel, to do things for us a little bit more, to the more that we can hear something that would be really helpful, so we just kind of just hit pause about with what's going on. Checking in with ourselves, like as we've explored over this conversation, Carol, like, and even understanding I'm not feeling great right now. However, I know that there's something underneath it that's doing some work so that I do feel fine, genuinely fine again. I do feel better. I do feel more like myself.
Yeah.
I think some discomfort that we feel, it is a message from our own internal system of like, we just need to slow this down a bit. Can we just hit pause, please?
Yeah.
So that we do come back to a space of, let's stick with fine, a space of fine, and seeing what that looks like as well.
I wonder if it takes the expectation of it as well. If you can say, I just want to get back to fine. Fine is fine. Fine is okay. Fine is better than, in struggling hugely or doing everything and being hyper and on top of the world. Fine is just we're okay managing.
Yeah, definitely. Anything we can do to really get back in touch with ourselves and notice how we're being supported in every moment is so helpful. Really, we spend so much time looking outside of ourselves for ways to support ourselves and ways to help ourselves, and the first thing we do when we think we've got something going on with us, is we will rush out into the world and go, I've got this going on, I don't know what to do with it, what should I do, what should I do? And there's lots of people out there that are happy to help with that and provide us with a whole ream of things we can do, some of which are helpful. But if we haven't checked in with ourselves first to hear what would be helpful now, we're going to lose sight of that even more when we're running through a list of 50 things you could do when you feel anxious. If one of those things that comes up with us when we check in is to anything from go and put the kettle on to send a message to Carol or send a message to James, how much more helpful is that when we follow that one message?
Yeah. And sometimes the message is stop making flipping to-do lists of how you're going to get better, because actually what you're doing is you're giving yourself 50 things more to think about to get yourself better. It's really interesting because I mean we need to come to a close at some point. I'm loving this, but I didn't say to you, but I said to other people, and I said, I'm doing this episode, you know, oh, I'm going to write a book called The Death of the World, the Death of the Word Fine, and Death to the Word Fine. But actually, this has really changed my mind, that actually maybe fine is a real friend that you need, and you need to make friends with fine and see it as a really positive baseline, a way of checking in with yourself and finding out what you need and knowing how much you're worth, and didn't
that's a good
expect
point.
it. Mm.
Yeah. Do you know, when you share that as well, fine can even be an invitation for somebody to really kind of help you when they notice they're like, no, you're not fine.
Mm.
So actually, on both sides, it can be super helpful.
This has been brilliant, really good. We always do 2 final things on the podcast. We have a bit of a challenge. So I guess the challenge for people listening today is maybe just have a think about how you feel when you're fine. Maybe just make a little note of how you feel when you're fine, and take stock of how often you check in with yourself, to ask yourself that, and be a bit more intentional in maybe just even stopping every day and just saying, where am I at?
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
I really like those 2 points that you shared. Yeah, checking in yourself. What would be helpful? One thing I do, because I'll still get caught up in my head at times, when I notice it, I will literally just go, right, stop. What's the next thing that I need to do that'll be helpful? And that alone opens up a space where something helpful comes up, and I follow that, and then I'm back on track again. So.
This has been brilliant, James. Right, we come to the last bit of the podcast, which is where I write a poem. Thankfully, fine rhymes with lots of things, so that's good. Not like visibility, which was quite a challenge last time. So just give me a couple of seconds. When I tell you I'm fine, the feelings are still all mine. And some are deep within, and some might start to begin to surface when I see you hearing me. When you listen, I react and we connect. And maybe something I didn't expect, seeing that fine is okay. Fine is a good baseline for who I am. Maybe not who I want to be all the time, but where I am today. And that's okay. I can look at the sunshine and say, I'm fine. There you go.
Amazing. Thank you.
James, thank you so much. We will put all about Project You and our mental health rocks, your Facebook community and everything. We'll put them all on the show notes. Is there anything that you haven't said that you want to say before we finish?
No, just to thank you for inviting me on the podcast. It's been fantastic just hanging out with you, exploring for this as well, and to meet you in person. And yeah, great work that you're doing. So thanks.
Lovely. Thank you so much, James. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.